All right, hi everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do the content roundup for April. This is 2026, by the way, if you're watching in a distant year. So we're going to go over the new things that are available. That will be either like product related, general news information, free stuff that's being released, and other little bits and bobs. So the Patreon fund for the beginning of April, which basically is the amount of money that pays for free project development, was about, I'm looking at the wrong spreadsheet. I've got my Lucasite count up instead. There you are. It came to about £321, which means it's added about 6.5 hours of work. So because it's an overtime, that's paid for Biogen development, which means on this next tick, going into May, Biogen version 10 will become public. It should do, which means we can show that off a bit more, talk a bit about that. You can get your hands on it. Oh, no, wait, actually, this is 1 month and 3 days. Maybe I will just make it public anyway, just to get it out there so people can play with it. Okay, so what else happened? A new section was added to the members lounge on the website for production files. This is because I'm working on a project that is kind of, I'm just codenaming Fold for now. It's also letting me figure out how I can structure production files for people going into the future, because I want to make all the production files for my projects available where I can. On the page, you'll find the April 2026 batch, and this is something that I've added to an additional time. We should talk a little bit more about that, like what the files are and what you can do with them. So at the time of recording this, there's 3 files on there. 2 of them are like sculpting related. One of them is a style test, and I think people will find the style test quite cool. There's also on the experiment section a spatial environment test, which was related to Afterglow version 2.3. So again, if you're on the silver tier of Patreon, you can access that. So if you don't have Afterglow, you'll still at least be able to play with some of the spatial environments work, and you may be able to learn some stuff from that about sky textures, bounce lighting, etc. On the matter of Afterglow, version 2.3 was released, and I can read you the quick synopsis even though we've done a video about it. 3 spatial environments were added, designed for world-based bounce lighting. Node groups have been created to improve usability of the light mapping nodes in studio environments. The scale of studio cages and studio environments has been unified, and the character cages category has now been merged with studio cages. A couple of new studio cages have been added, and matcap materials have been rendered for your consideration. Additional small changes include category reorganization and the inclusion of extra preset gradients in studio environment light materials. I've continued releasing like renders from my Marathon kind of fan art render stuff, and they've done really well on social media. We've had some videos released, a lesson about creativity, the one talking about Marathon fan art, the grossest thing I've made in Blender, which was like the Leech project, new sculpting brushes for Blender, talking about a pack released by my friend Donna, and then the Afterglow release. A variety of shorts were released, and then some other stuff. So quite a lot of unspoken things have happened in the last month. Due to recent events, my attitude towards the Blender community has kind of had like a polar shift. It's gone from, wow, I really like being part of this community, to, wow, fuck this community, just to put it bluntly. Now, that doesn't apply to like you watching this, but it's really kind of shifted my perspective on what's important and what I want to focus on. After covering the super hype situation, just as a matter of being like a public facing personality, anything that gets said about me, I see, which isn't like, from a mental health perspective, you want to be able to control the flow of your like sensory input. But by covering the super hype situation, which by the way, I think, the most recent video, like the report kind of like highlighting the updates they made to make the system optional, which is great. It was way better now than it was originally presented. And it pretty much answers all my concerns as to making us false advertisers. After just covering that, it very quickly became apparent that drawing attention to that system made me enemy number 1 for like a whole bunch of people. And nowhere did that become more clear than the Blender Artist website. I got people attacking me for letting people know that I didn't have to unlist videos, for example. Oh, do you see here where Curtis said, oh, he didn't have to unlist this video? It's so passive aggressive. Isn't he such a bad person for being so passive aggressive? I thought I made it quite clear, like my main concerns are so legally based. One really important reason for doing that is to let people know I haven't been bribed into doing it. Here in the UK, we have the Advertisement Standards Authority, and one thing you'll notice with specifically UK-based Blender creators, when we're sponsored for videos, we have to declare it before the person like observes the content. So we can do that in the title, we can do that in the thumbnail, and most of the time we choose to do that in the thumbnail. We are required to declare when we've been paid for something, although there's a lot of gray lines, right? Because incentive comes in different forms and different distances from the messaging. We're not specifically required to state when we have not been paid for something, but sometimes I think the overlap is important, because I did get a few messages when I put out the update video for Super Hype that said, oh, have you been paid for this? Or what did you sign? Because now you're being more compliant. From my perspective, it's extremely appropriate for me to let people know when I don't have to remove a video as a declaration that I haven't been paid for it. This really ticked people off. There was a lot of extremely childish behavior. So what I did was I sat down with a bunch of other creators, sympathetic creators, and we've been speaking quite thoroughly about like our perspectives on things and our philosophy in terms of creation and the kind of people we want to surround ourselves with. And it's not just been about the Superhive thing, because it's also been about, like AI related stuff as well recently. But the general perspective has been, we've realized that the things that we actually like connecting with in these art communities isn't specifically just Blender. Blender just kind of became like this like focal point for everything. But yeah, like the basic principles aren't very Blender specific. Like, for example, the freedom to create, which is Blender's core philosophy, is something that just applies across the board. The freedom of expression is another thing I think it is important, and the freedom to be like who you want to be. Well, Blender is like this axis that we've kind of built our community and these philosophies around. It's not required. And it probably doesn't really sound like much of a change. Like, all my work and all my interests are going to be very like Blender specific still going forward, but it's just cognitively like moving the resting point to, oh, I'm part of this community, to, oh no, I'm just my own thing. Because actually, I don't like the Blender community. Probably sounds really weird like saying that. Again, it's been highlighted more and more now that the people, not everyone, but the people running the places, the moderation, certain product creators, not all of them, by the way, I can't like lob them all into a certain group. I don't want to be associated with a lot of them, like at all. I think they're freaking awful people. It's absolutely no surprise to me now that the Blender Foundation is so like protective over the Blender name. And I want to give like a little apology. I don't know if I've already given this apology on video. I know I've recorded it once, but to the Blender Foundation, because in the original like Superhive video talking about the kind of original messaging for their like support system model, Pablo Vasquez from the Blender Foundation, I saw you going into the comments, and whenever someone mistook Superhive for an element of the Blender Foundation, Pablo went into the comments and said, Superhive is not associated with the Blender Foundation. And I was like, oh, I hope he wasn't annoyed that I didn't make that clear at the video, because at this point, it just like skimmed by me. I thought everyone knew at this point, since the name change from Blender Market to Superhive. Basically, the point is, if I had known that people would have still been mistaking it, then I would have put a clarification in the video. There's been a lot of drama, like beyond that, in especially the Twitter space relating to Andrew Price and his views on AI. Some of it's justified, like, a certain amount of justified criticism and debate only up to a certain point, and then some of it's unjustified. I am aware of the other stuff relating to Andrew Price, especially being a fag myself and having gone through bullying in school and all that. It's complicated. Oftentimes, especially in things like the Blender conference, I've had to talk to people I don't like and be cordial with them and pretend I do like them. I'm not saying this about Andrew specifically. I've actually had some really nice conversations with Andrew. It's a bit like what I've been saying about, I don't really like the Blender community, as in this now like popularly known congregation of certain websites and groups. It's like, okay, forget that. We'll just focus on our own community and my relationship with the Blender Foundation only. Whatever the hell this thing is, not it. Don't care about them. So in terms of actual changes for the channel, there's going to be less featuring of certain things. There's going to be much more focus on my own things. In fact, I'm having to establish some rules now that videos can only be made under certain circumstances. When there has been a productive change, some kind of update or new release in terms of tools, or if it's associated with providing value to the patrons. And really the hardline part of the rule is just those two things, product, Patreon. That's it. Nothing else. This is a bit of an exception because it's like an update for the Patreon. I'm trying to stop myself from doing just discussions and just news things because they're becoming cognitive excuses not to work on more productive things. Not that you should be forcing yourself to be productive, but what I find is that I do get satisfaction and value in being productive with tools. Like, I find purpose in it, it's enjoyable, but I think YouTube has hard-coded this mental block that prevents me from getting there, and I've spoken about that for, a few years. I recently, over the span of about 4 days, worked on the Afterglow 2.3 update, put it out, and so far it's been about $2,000 of earning for the 4 days, which is good because my last year of income has been the worst it's been for years at about £11,000. And actually, on that note, it's been really funny because, again, one of the messages about me from Blender Artists was like, oh, Curtis needs drama. That's how he makes money on YouTube. I'm like, I don't think you realize I'm hemorrhaging subscribers because, after the COVID bump. It was too much growth too quickly, kind of messed up everything in terms of like audience interest and stuff. So it's hemorrhaging. I get about like £30 a month from YouTube if I'm lucky, which is not even enough to pass the payment threshold. So if you want to compare like £30 from YouTube to, again, 4 days of work, one update, $2,000 for this month, drama does fuck all. If anything, it just makes me more of a target. But if people need something to jerk their hate boners off to, then fine. But don't just make shit up for your narrative, which I think kind of ties into something a bit more that I don't really like about the Blender community, which is that so often things seem like a competition. I hate competitive stuff, competitiveness. Even coming back to Superhype a little bit, one of the older criticisms that I had was about the front page system being, just like a basic leadership ranking, and that it wasn't really more than that. I think I've got more of like a farmer mind where I would rather try and cultivate a wider set of things. You don't really know how much value something can provide unless you cultivate it, you know what I mean? And I think one example or one analogy I used in that domain before was the mineral content of soil and the chemical content of soil is not like an endless thing. It needs rejuvenation. And if you just do the same thing over and over and over again, then you're just going to be using up all the nitrogen, among other things. I look at creatives in a similar way. Following the policy of tending to your garden, I think it's important to cultivate other people in some way in the future, even if you don't know how it will benefit you again. Not that that's the only reason you should be doing it. So again, when I look into like the very base level criticisms of me, which again, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but when I look at like the core reasons for it, I get a sense, like a tone of competitiveness. And it's just not a philosophy I'm compatible with. I've had a lot of people say to me, oh, I would like to make a tool of this. They've got like a really cool workflow, but they're like, oh, but people have already done that. And I'm like, who fucking cares? People have made lighting tools. Didn't stop me from making Afterglow. Even when I first started announcing Afterglow, people were like, other product creators were like, what's the difference to HDRIs? And I'm like, there's such a huge world of difference. And this is why I put so much information about that in the store page. You just can't see it because you haven't made the creative links. It's kind of funny. People don't know what they don't know. Continuity is a fallacy. Delete all of science will come back again exactly the same. Fundamental laws. But delete all of art, and it will not come back the same. A bit like religion in some way. The thing is, every single person, if given the same creative task, art-wise, will come up with something different. No matter how fundamental and static the laws of physics are, give 1 trillion people throughout time the same artistic task and it will always come out a little bit different. So I when I look at things that are for some reason considered competitive, like products, thinking about it like art. There will never be an identical product unless someone is actively copying, right? If you actually just applied your creativity to it, you don't have anything to worry about. But in some way, it does kind of require the self-awareness to know that you're not too comfortable just like taking from other people's work. If you're genuinely true to yourself and you're just exploring something you're interested in, like me with light, you will be fine. You just need to be honest to your passions. Generally, I think that's just a really good way to go through life. It's borderline spiritual in some ways, which is interesting because I'm generally, an atheist, but I'm not like anti-spiritual. Like I find spirituality in experience. That makes sense? It's got nothing to do with like, things beyond the veil, even if they do exist. It's just knowing that like we are here, we have experiences that are different to everyone else. Why impose rules on them? And competitiveness is one of those limiting factors. I know this is dragging on a bit, but now that I'm kind of imposing a rule of only really doing videos when something productive happens, I think, fuck it, I'll get all this discussion out in one go. I've had beef with Blender creators before because of this philosophy. For example, in certain servers where people have been starting to make products and someone else comes along and says, oh, you're doing this wrong. This percentage is wrong. This messaging is wrong. Do it this way. I will defend them. I will jump in and get beefy. I'll be like, fuck off. Let them try something new. And that's gotten me into some beef with people because I am hard-headed. With that philosophy, do not inhibit people's freedoms. I suppose that's some explanation for why I wanted to talk about the Superhype thing, because with the original messaging, again, now it's being corrected, now it's all optional. With the original messaging, it was seemingly conveying a non-optional attitude. So I spoke to them about that. And, I've had some weird thoughts as well with especially the AI drama recently. I've seen discussions about people trying to figure out like which of their creators they should like or shouldn't like. There's conversations about the Blender Bros as well. We won't get into that. Again, it's very complex for me because like I'm friends with people that I don't share opinions with and viewpoints with. I'm friends with people that probably would have bullied me like in school. But then again, they never get the true me when we talk. They get like a masked version. But there's so much like angst because it just kind of relies then on like one person makes a subreddit thread. It's like, oh, what do you think about this creator? And then it's just gossip. I heard they said this. I heard they said this. I heard they said this, which is natural. And I remember being the gossip target like when I was younger. But I've been thinking, to save people the effort, if one day that happens to me, I can just tell you what I think and what my pitfalls are. So let's just save the effort. AI. I like AI, but not for art. I've done experiments for non-art and art-related things. Some cool results, but fundamentally, the lack of purpose just stopped me from connecting with it. For example, I did material tests, and again, the results came out cool, but then it was like, what will I actually use these for? Like, it looks cool, but that's about it. I would rather, and then we invested time into like hex scatter and stuff afterwards, sample things from real life. I finally got the file back from Azzy, so I can try and carry on doing some of that myself. Basically, I just lost interest in the art side of AI. But on the flip side, I'm using it for data analysis. So no, I'm never going to sit there and tell you, you need to learn AI if you want to be relevant, because I think that's just a bit of a fuck-ass basic take. I mean, there's a surprising amount of like gossip for Blender creators in terms of like, right-wing views and stuff. And I'm like, you never have to worry about that with me. It's funny when I talk to like other people watching the Blender community. We don't know why there's so much of that. I don't know where it comes from. And I mean, we found like correlations, like, hard surface art sometimes attracts more right-wing people, something to do with an obsession about guns, but not all the time, because there's like much more liberal people. Although I think this is just me speculating, the liberal side tends to be more female with the hard surface work. So we're not entirely sure if ideology can be correlated to art type or not. Just something interesting. We also found that product creators, for some reason, like making autistic-related jokes. We think there might be a correlation there. We're not sure because we share messaging, and jokes about things being autistic tend to appear more statistically from product creators that have demonstrated competitive attitudes. Again, that sounds really oddly specific. They're all drama as well. I won't say who they were, but one time I was setting up a server with someone, and they called a channel or a category or the server, I can't remember, the Council of Autists. Now, I said to them, I'm not really comfortable with that name. It just seems like it's kind of throwing autistic people like under the bus like a joke, And then they got angry with me and said, what, are you saying that autistic people aren't capable? Like, why can't we call it the Council of Autists? And that's a straw man argument, by the way. I was like, no, I just think it was flippant. Like, this is supposed to be a professional server, and you're calling it the Council of Autists like a joke. They immediately tried to flip it. They are a Blender YouTuber, and I've got the receipts. So if you ever hear anyone say, Curtis doesn't like autistic people, that's a fucking lie. My entire life is dominated by autistic people. The reason humanity has developed is specifically because of obsessive autistic information processing. I think the world owes them a debt more than they know. But it's not always so clear cut because, it's something a lot of people struggle with. I think a lot of damage has been done recently, with the whole administration. So yeah, LGBT, you will always be welcome here. I am, if you find it important, like kind of parasocially associating bisexual, homo-romantic. It's not, again, always clear cut. Do you get the symbolism? I put it everywhere. Black and blue. I can and have fallen in love with girls before, especially growing up. It is so rare by comparison, though, that on a, what's it called, a Kinsey scale? Yeah, Kinsey scale, 7-point continuum, 0 to 6, used to categorize sexual orientation. So I would be like a 5 then, I guess. Basically, I don't mind if people call me gay. If that's what you want to refer to me as, that's fine. Although, no, actually, because I've had to go with people for calling me gay before, but only when they've done it spitefully. But if it's just a good faith conversation, call me whatever you want. And what the LGBT community would consider non-scene, I think is the term. SCENE, meaning that I don't participate in things like pride parades and all that. It's an informal term used to describe a gay person who does not participate in the stereotypical gay social scene. Yeah, I've never been to a gay bar, parties, pride events. Not that I'm against it. I think this is more because for me, it often feels like 2 attraction circuits running in one head. I'm not dysphoric. I've never been dysphoric, but I'll put it this way. When you have like fantasy dreams about people, like, romantic, whatever's happening in my brain, it's never both at the same time. if I'm dreaming, it's only one gender or the other exclusively. So I don't know how the attraction circuit works, but they're not intermingling. I can go into a lot more, like maybe NSFW detail with that. But I've had 30 years to learn about it. And as much as I kind of want them to be intermingling, they're just not. It's like two circuits, but one is more dominant than the other. So in some ways, I do feel like there's two people in this head. But it's kind of funny when I look back at, all the creative advice I give to people about being an artist and a reporter. So much of my self-discoveries in terms of how to be a more effective creative rely on seeing yourself as two people. I don't think I have a multiple personality disorder, but I think something about me knows that I'm more than one person. So naturally, if there's anyone wondering about my opinion on trans stuff, in case it ever becomes relevant in any kind of drama conversations, I think it's pretty obvious at this point. Why would I ever have anything against it? You will never have to worry about me holding right-wing opinions about that, because I actually put the minimal amount of effort into learning about it. But obviously, my own experience does help. And while I've never experienced dysphoria, I do have some experience of losing ownership over a limb, for example, through hemiplegic migraine. I lost control of the right side of my body and separately the left side in another case, where I would go to reach for things and it just wouldn't listen. It would go somewhere else. It's the weirdest thing ever. So again, it's so disappointing when you see people that oh, well, I've never felt it, so I don't believe it's real. Same thing with just basic, homosexuality as well. So, well, I don't like guys, so how could you like guys? It's wow, you're such a fucking genius. There are more things in the heaven and earth than I dreamt of in your philosophy. That's a Shakespeare quote, right? I think that's kind of been another criteria for the people that I get along with. They're all like me. Not specifically in the sexuality way. I'm the only person specifically like me that I know, which is kind of lonely, and I am lonely in that way. Sad. I am 30 now with no partner. Not for lack of trying, by the way. The pool is just smaller. And also, though I myself don't make much money, I do happen to live in a rich, affluent area, which means that it's more kind of dominated by OAPs. I mean, there are some younger people nearby, but I don't know. My chances aren't great. So I might have got this out of my system now. It's gone on for a while. Is there anything else that I should clarify? What other dramas have there been? Religion? When I was younger, I hated religious people. And I still have some residual reactions to that. It was in part because of the sexuality. I mean, I was in love with a boy once who I'm pretty sure liked me back, but he was confused. He spoke to his religious mum about it, and then she was apparently very angry, strict with him, and it completely fucked up their personality. They went from being a really sweet, innocent guy to being just the typical jock asshole, and it kind of broke me, really. There was too much stuff like that growing up. And I always kind of felt like religious people hated me because I had a really good friend that was a really deep Christian, and his parents were. His mum was lovely, just the pure image of what a Christian should be, just unconditional love across the board, no judgment. His dad was a little bit different. There was there was one time, for example, where we were at school for it was an award ceremony or something. And I was just giving my friends a hug goodbye. Nothing out of the ordinary for anyone. You just go and you give your friends a hug goodbye. All right, see you around. All right, catch you later. That kind of thing. But as soon as I hugged that friend, the dad said, well, that's enough of that. By the way, he got reprimanded for it later. The mum apparently had a go at him. But it was just moments like that where some insecure fuckwit just can't keep his mouth shut. And I had all sorts of psychological bullying growing up. I would have some of the arsehole groups would nominate someone to come to me and pretend like they were having gay feelings or something to try and get me to confess. But I never fell for it. Because, I mean, they were a little bit thick. Really, why would the random football guy suddenly come over and be I don't know, I'm just having some weird feelings. And I'm what the fuck are you talking about? I think I asked one of them, are you on drugs? There was a situation where the group had kind of figured out a guy that I liked. So they got into his Facebook account and then started messaging me, pretending to be him and pretending to be interested. Thankfully, I didn't fall for it. A, because it would have been too good to be true and I was already burnt out enough. But B, because they were so thick, they couldn't even compose basic words. Every word had a spelling mistake. And I was okay, I'm obsessed with the guy. I know what he writes like. But that's the kind of shit they would pull. And then there was times where we'd be lining up for something I can't remember if it was a photo or whatever. And then like one of the football guys again, like he would wrench out and then he would pinch my ass and then he'd be like, "You like that, don't you?" And then like they'd start laughing behind. Now these are quite, personal things. But again, I'm putting this all out there for a few reasons. One is with relation to all the drama stuff. I want you to know exactly where I stand on these issues. Number two, if there's anyone out there that does feel a bit out of place and you need someone to resonate with, I've been learning more and more recently that it is important for you to have people that you can identify with so that you feel like you're not alone. Okay, I've kind of avoided that a little bit. Anyway, thank you. And I'll have more stuff for you soon.